The state likes monogamy because with it they can emasculate men. Let's talk about this. Roll the intro. All right, so recently I've had a few more things come to my understanding and more things that have been sort of playing in my mind as I've understood and continue to research and study this thing we call marriage. And I thought that this evening I would try to hit it from a slightly different angle, from an angle that we don't normally hit it from. I typically take a look at this thing from a biblical or from a scriptural perspective because Scripture doesn't say what the church says that it says, and because the church has worked very hard at pushing what I would call the monogamy-only cult. But it's interesting that the church and the state tend to walk hand in hand. If we go all the way back into the Holy Roman Empire and take a look at what was going on with the Roman Catholic Church, certainly they were in bed with the state in a big, big way. But we can actually look back further than that and see that monogamy only as a state tool of dominion and as a state tool of emasculating men and drawing power to themselves or securing power for themselves actually comes out of Greco-Roman law. And so what I want to do this evening, we're going to go back to a book and some specific quotes that I have talked about on multiple occasions, as well as a couple short video clips that I think may help drive the point home. I specifically want to go back into this incredible book, this fantastic, very well-researched book by John Witt Jr. titled The Western Case for Monogamy Over Polygamy. Now, he may draw a distinction at the beginning of the book. I forget. It's been a while since I read the whole thing, but the highlighted portions I like to go back and marinate in because they're so juicy. He does a fantastic job. Now, he was writing for the Cambridge Studies in Law and Christianity. You see this up here at the top of the book. And he's a world-class researcher. In fact, just the bibliography at the back of this book is something like 45 pages long. Books and books and books. And he's been writing and studying marriage and Christian studies, etc., for a long, long time. So when he makes the case and when he has the chutzpah to say that the case can't be made strictly from Scripture, that you have to reach into Western civilization, and that's a nice way of saying Greco-Roman law, he's not kidding. And he's actually exposing the very problem that Christendom has when they say traditional marriage. It's just that. It's traditional marriage. But they use some cherry-picked verses in order to uphold their cult. So I'm not going to go into the religious aspect this evening, but one of the things that I'd really like to do is take us back to look at some quotes, some citations from the book, and let's talk about them, because these are very important in understanding and getting a really good picture. Now, this is from around page, we can back this up a little bit. I think I can see, can't see the page number on this. We'll get it in a next page or two. But he's talking in a section here on Greco-Roman and Germanic laws on monogamy and polygamy. And he says already a half a millennium before, that means 500 years before the time of Jesus or Yeshua, Ancient Greek and ancient Rome had chosen monogamy as the only valid form of marriage that could produce legitimate and heritable widows and children. 6th and 5th century BCE laws of various Greek city-states made clear that valid marriages had to be monogamous, and this norm also became a commonplace in the first Roman law collections that survived from the mid-5th century BCE. Listen, monogamy was and the quote here, quintessentially Greek institution of the ancient world. Stanford ancient historian Walter Scheidel has shown and the Thracian Greeks and the Romans after them regarded polygamy as a barbarian custom or a mark of tyranny. Now, I'll take you to the bottom of the page here because I want you to see this. For your information, if you want to go find this document, I recommend that you can find this. It's free online. You can download it. I think I originally found it at academia.edu, but it's by Walter Scheidel, and it is called A Peculiar Institution, Greco-Roman Monogamy in a Global Context. A lot of interesting information in that article worth you getting a copy of and holding on to. But here's the question. Why did the Greeks, even before the Romans, why was it that they were interested in monogamy? What was their purpose? What was their intent? Okay? And we'll get to that in just a second. But it says by the 4th century BCE, this is 400 years before Yeshua, Jesus, Greek philosophers were extolling the private and public goods of monogamous marriage. For example, or Plato, for example, said that a just republic must arrange for marriages sacred as so far as may be, and the most sacred marriages would be those that were most beneficial. But beneficial to who? And that's the big question, right? The most beneficial, Plato later said, were monogamous marriages that met the natural. I need to blow these things up as we go. I didn't make individual slides because I want to be able to show you on the page. So this is page 104 and 105 of Witt's book. The human need for dyadic love as a way for humans to complete themselves. Okay, so that sounds really nice and neat, although something a previous owner of this book had put in there is the origin of love. Love is born into every human being. It calls back the halves of our original nature, so on and so forth. In Scripture, we find that love develops in marriage, but what we don't find is being married for love in the way that we have this in Western civilization, this romance idea that is somewhat developed in Rome, but it's not until later, romance, that becomes a big deal. The 17 and 1800s, it became a really big deal in Western literature. But here's something very important to understand. Plato's student Aristotle, in 380, who lived 384 to 321 BCE, viewed monogamous marriage as the foundation of the polis. Now, those who have listened to me before know that I talk about this particular aspect often. It's the foundation of the state or the city-state. Think about metropolis, right? If you're not familiar with that term, he's talking about the state. Why would monogamous marriage be the foundation of the state? Well, he says every state is composed of households. Aristotle wrote famously in his Politics, every household in turn is composed of a pairing of those who cannot exist without one another, so on and so forth. But if we go on and understand some more depth that's not necessarily covered in this particular piece right here, and we'll come back to what we're talking about, but if we go and study some more depth, one of the things that we find out is that women always outnumber men. But in their understanding, that wasn't the case. What they understood was that if every man, no matter how big of a dolt, how big of a scumbag, how big of a beta male, if every man could get a woman, it would prevent any kind of uprising, or it would prevent discontent among men, which made the state more secure. Also, in their theory, it meant that every man that got called up for battle or for war would then have something to fight for because he's got something at home. The big challenge, though, is that in God's economy, or in the economy of the Creator, let's put it that way, he didn't design men to be weakened by the estate of being gifted anything, okay? Have to fight for it, have to compete for it. It's what makes us stronger. It's what makes us bigger. It makes us better as a species. You look at every male-female species relationship out there, there's competition, and then within the competition, the stronger males are the ones who do the mating, or the ones who do the leading, or the ones who do everything that carries and continues the species, versus allowing the weaker males to produce or reproduce. And that sounds harsh, but that's very true. But there was another reason. The other reason is that if they could limit men to one marriage, however, allow them to fulfill their sexual proclivities any way they wanted to outside of that marriage, and we'll see this in just a second, if they could limit men within the size of their family, they could limit men from being able to build wealth and power blocks. Men could not then build patriarchal structures. They could not build large family units that worked together. Now, I want to show you a little clip here. We're going to come back to the book because there are lots more things here that we want to talk about. In fact, I'll take you to the next page. I think is where we have this other piece that I was talking about. We're gonna look at a few more things, but in Greco-Roman law, polygamy was gradually criminalized. It says even though monogamy was the marital ideal of this classical Western world, both Greek and Roman law did allow a married man to have sex with his slaves, prostitutes with impunity. These laws also allowed a married man to retain a long-standing concubine so long as she did not live in the marital home and did not inherit anything from the man. Roman law later banned this practice. A man could have a wife or concubine, but not both. Now notice here a couple things. One, Greco-Roman law was the monogamy-only cult. It was the monogamy-only culture, but promiscuity was allowed, okay? And they also allowed divorce, no-fault divorce, and you could trade them in as often as you wanted and go get another one, so on and so forth. Kind of a lot like what we have in culture today, right? What we have is a monogamy-only culture, but we do not have, and sexual promiscuity is simply winked at. Now, I've got a book over here on my bookshelf by Dr. Martin Madan titled Theliaphthora. It's the first of a 3-volume set, but in that he demonstrates, one, that women always outnumber men, and two, the answer for that, or the result of that, is you will have sexual promiscuity and you will have every manner of sexual deviance because women will be cast aside. They become chattel and are not valued in any way. And the end result is you just trade them in, go get another one, use them and abuse them, prostitutes, the whole 9 yards. All of those things happen in a monogamy-only culture. It's the same thing that went on in Rome because you always have women outnumbering men, and so there had the inequality in numbers allows for the abuse of the women instead of empowering men to take on more than one and build a household and secure her and maintain law and order in the home, right? That's what functions in a society that actually honors and operates according to the way the law of the Most High is written. So let me show you something else here. I don't have a real clear order on how I want to do this, but I want to take this clip right here first, and I want to show you what happens when you have a patriarch and a strong family if the government, for example, comes after them. Okay? So let's take a look at this. I want to go back and let's look at this again. We want to parse this out just a little bit. Let's go back. I'm going to hit play and pause. Notice that all of these baboons are running away from something, or these monkeys are running away from something. These are small monkeys. And what's going to happen is just before the cheetah comes into the view of the camera, the patriarch, the big bad guy, the big alpha, is going to jump in there and lead. And when he gets in there and leads, his troop, I guess is probably the correct name, are going to jump in right behind him, and they will together take care of the cheetah. Here's the problem. In a monogamy-only culture, a patriarch does not have the ability to build a strong family block that has many sons. When things went south for Jacob in the rape of Dinah, I think that is around Genesis chapter 34, if I remember correctly, things went ugly. He had a bunch of sons around him that stood up, were ready to go to war. You look at the circumstances, for example, with many of the other patriarchs in Scripture. They had large families. They could build wealth and power blocks. Okay, watch what happens here. You're going to see the big patriarch. Look at how much bigger he is. This is going to be your alpha running in here. Watch this. Here he comes right here. Oh, he's going to jump and he's going to get right in front of the cheetah, and everybody else comes in with him. And at that point, the cheetah is the one that's badly outnumbered. And this is the circumstance. This is what goes on in a culture that's patriarchal, because then the government can't come in and tear things up. The government has to go through the patriarchs, and the patriarchs have large blocks of power around them. They have wealth blocks around them. When you have a monogamy culture, the state likes a monogamous culture because men can't build wealth and power blocks, can't build large families. You might have 3 or 4 sons, but you're not going to have 12 or 15 sons, right? And that's a big difference. That's a really big difference. I happen to have 4 sons, right? I was blessed with 4 sons, no daughters. We may, under the circumstances, we're not able to have more children. However, what would the difference be with a large patriarchal family that's got 2 or 3 or 4 wives and 15 or 20 children, right? It's wealth and power building. And so one of the reasons that the state does not, or that the state loves monogamy or does not like polygyny, is because it emasculates men. It removes from them their ability to build wealth and power blocks. But there's another reason, and it's another reason that we saw in the article a little bit, and I'm gonna show you that it just is straight up given in detail right here, because the left understands what they're trying to do and what they're trying to destroy. Okay, I'm going to take this all the way back to the beginning, and I want you to pay very close attention to this. We're going to go back through it in just a second as well. I think that let's look at this.
Kate Millett, she was an American feminist, author, and artist. She is the founder of the National Organization for Women. Her sister, Mallory, was invited to one of the first meetings that established the National Organization for Women. So this is a feminist group that has been around since the start of the feminist movement, and they basically pioneered the whole movement. And she opened the meeting with the following back and forth recitation. So this is how the beginning of the meeting went. "Why are we here today?" she asked. "To make revolution," they answered.
Revolution.
"What kind of revolution?" "The cultural revolution."
Cultural.
"How do we make cultural revolution?" "By destroying the American family." "How do we destroy the family?" "By destroying the American patriarch." "And how do we destroy the American patriarch?" "By taking away his power." "And how do we do that?" "By destroying monogamy." "And how do we destroy monogamy?" "By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality."
Understand. I think that the National Organization for Women, or the lady who put this call and response together at the National Organization for Women at their inception or founding, she understood much of what I'm saying right here. What she didn't understand is that the promiscuity and the homosexuality and other things, that the debauchery that follows comes from having monogamy in place, because you can go back centuries before even this, and Dr. Martin Madden will tell you that everything that was going on in culture, prostitution has always been here, okay? And prostitution flourishes the most in a monogamy-only culture, okay? So she understood that part, but she also understood that the way to emasculate the man is to remove his ability to be a patriarch, to remove his ability to have a family, to remove his ability to build wealth and power blocks. The state is in bed with the church, or it technically came through the church fathers, and they're codifying into church tradition things that were already written in Greco-Roman law. Let's listen to this again.
An American feminist, author, and artist. She is the founder of the National Organization for Women. Her sister, Mallory, was invited to one of the first meetings that established the National Organization for Women. So this is a feminist group that has been around since the start of the feminist movement, and they basically pioneered the whole movement. And she opened the meeting with the following back and forth recitation. So this is how the beginning of the meeting went. "Why are we here today?" she asked. "To make revolution," they answered. "What kind of revolution?" "The cultural revolution." "How do we make cultural revolution?" "By destroying the American family." "How do we destroy the family?" "By destroying the American patriarch." "And how do we destroy the American patriarch?" "By taking away his power." "And how do we do that?" "By destroying monogamy." "And how do we destroy monogamy?" "By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality."
Come on.
So specifically, the way that they were to destroy, or that they were looking to destroy the specifically the way that they were looking to destroy the American family was by taking monogamy to the next level and promoting eroticism, promiscuity, prostitution, so on and so forth, and doing all of this through feminism. Well, feminists, instead of being married, or instead of having opportunity to marry, if you go back, the way that the feminist movement really started had a lot to do, or it was fed in large part by the suffragette movement, which was going on and fed by the 600,000 women that couldn't get married or couldn't have a husband because of the losses during the war between the states. So you have 600,000 American men between the North and the South were dead. That's 600,000 women that won't get, and this is on top of the already larger number of women. Now, what if polygyny had been an option, as the word of the Most High allows? They would have been sucked up by every other good, strong man around, and the women wouldn't have been out there, frustrated, maybe just straight sexual frustration, but frustrated and fomenting this thing that winds up being the feminist movement. But let's go back to what's going on with the Romans. If we move on over to page 109, the prohibition on a married man living with or marrying his concubine in addition to his wife appears to be very old law. Gellius went on, it's said to be King Numa's, that is Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome, circa 716 to 673 BCE. This is 670 to 700 years before Christ. This is even before the Jews went to Babylon. Okay, long time before that. They're already coming up with this monogamy-only nonsense over in Greco-Rome, right? The only lawful marriage that could produce heritable widows and children is the union of one man and one woman who have the freedom, fitness, and capacity to marry each other, wrote several Roman jurists in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Once voluntarily contracted and consensually formed, such a monogamous marriage is viewed as presumptively inseparable communion, a sacred and enduring union. How much of that sounds like what you hear in church, right? Same stuff that you hear in church. Now, I will agree that a marriage is between a man and a woman, but there's nothing in Scripture that prevents a man from having more than one marriage. In the same way, they understand that marriage is this inseparable or should be indissoluble, but later on we will find that divorce became a very big deal, and I didn't realize I didn't even have that on the screen there for you. Became a very big deal later on, okay? So, right here is it is the quote that I quoted: the prohibition on a man living with or marrying his concubine in addition to his wife appears to be very old law. So this comes straight out of John Witt Jr.'s book. And he continues, later Roman emperors, as we saw in chapter 1, took special aim at Jewish polygamists in 393. This is 400 years after Yeshua. In 393, Emperor Theodosius and others announced none of the Jews shall enter into several marriages at the same time. This right here is a major highlight telling us that Jews, those of the house of Judah during Roman times, were marrying in polygynous marriages. Everybody wants to say, well, Jesus said you can't do that. No, it was very common, and he said nothing. That's the point. In fact, that explains why he could very easily tell the parable of the 10 virgins and take the 5 that were watching and waiting, take them into the wedding chamber. You know, who takes the bridesmaids into the wedding chamber? Nobody. It's the brides that go into the wedding chamber. And that's exactly what we see in Matthew chapter 25, verse 10, because the word for wedding is actually plural. It's weddings, plural, right? But it was very common. Other studies have demonstrated that it was very common for polygyny to be going on during this time. In 535, Emperor Justinian repeated this prohibition, calling polygamy contrary to nature and declaring again that all children born of the second wife to be illegitimate, and ordered the seizure of 1/4 of the property of any practicing polygamist. Listen, if they have to bring out the laws, it's because it's going on. They weren't writing laws about something that wasn't happening. So that tells us this was commonplace among the Jews. And if you actually go back and read some of the early church fathers like Chrysostom, and I want to say it was Justin the Martyr, there are others that specifically talk about Jews having 4 and 5 wives. Very common, okay? This was not uncommon among those who practiced the faith from which we come. okay? Or anyone who practices and keeps Torah, you understand Scripture allows polygyny. And the Jews, all of Israel, in fact, all 12 tribes, not just the house of Judah, but all 12 tribes practiced polygyny. It was very common, okay? And it empowers men to be men. It empowers men to build wealth and nation building blocks, right? This is how the men of Issachar, according to 1 Chronicles chapter 5, I think it is, the men of Issachar had many wives. They could bring many warriors to battle because they had many wives. It just straight tells us that. So early church canon, okay? In its first 3 centuries, the Christian church had a testy and sometimes tempestuous relationship with the sophisticated Greco-Roman law and culture in which it was born. Early Christian leaders did adopt a number of Roman legal institutions and practices, including a number of their marriage and family norms. Okay? The bottom line is Christianity built their marriage tradition on Greco-Roman law, and then they justified it with a few scantily chosen pieces of scripture, often ripped straight out of context. Okay? Very common, and it's the same arguments we hear today, that once you understand and you recognize them, you recognize that it's inane. It is stupid stuff that comes out of the mouths of pastors. Recently had this debate with 2 pastors. You can go back on my channel and you can see the debate, but you can hear the dumbness come out of their mouths and things that just don't make sense. They're justifying things, and their whole argument was based on logical fallacies and ad hominem attacks. It was not based on anything that was solidly founded in Scripture. They were eaten up is what they were. They don't accept the whole law. They claim to accept the whole law, but they don't accept the whole law. And that may have been the last of my pieces of the book to cite. Here's the point. The point that I want to make is that the state likes monogamy. The state teaches and embraces and holds fast to monogamy because it emasculates men, because it removes from men the competition to be strong. It removes from men the need or the desire to build wealth and power blocks. It takes away from you the ability to exercise the fullness of who you were created to be. Instead, it means that you have to be dependent on the state, and that's the way they like it. But more than that, with a glut of women and excess of women, there are always more women than men at every time. We're born at roughly the same rate, males and females. However, males tend to die more often in crib death. Males tend to do more stupid things. Males tend to go off to war and do dumb things. Males tend to wind up in prison more often. Males tend to get involved in drugs and alcohol and other things. They wind up homeless more often. Males remove themselves from the marriage pool at a much faster rate than women, leaving more and more women available. The problem then is, what are the women to do? The women are left to either fish the bottom of the barrel or try to figure out how to free some man up from the woman that he's attached to so that she can have a man. This free radical system, this monogamy-only system, this church tradition system benefits the state because it leaves a whole lot of women that need a sugar daddy, and the sugar daddy is Uncle Sam, Uncle Sugar. Okay, so not only does it emasculate men, it makes the women dependent upon the state. And then women dependent upon the state do what? They leave their children to the state, or the state raises their children. And then what happens? As wards of the state, they can be trained up for the purpose of the state, the state's needs, the state's purpose, which is not unlike Sparta, some of those places where they wanted the children from the very beginning anyway. The entire monogamy-only cult is a wicked, wicked cult. And it benefits the state. It's all about the state. It's all about taking the power away from the man. So that's kind of hitting it from a different angle than we've hit it before. I hope that you'll find something in here that benefits you. If you like our content, hit the like and subscribe buttons, please. Would appreciate comments, would love it if you share. And if you're really serious about some of the content that we make, do me a favor and come to our Patreon, join the Patreon, $3, $5 a month, something like that. For a cup of coffee a month, you can be in our private Telegram group and be able to be involved in the things that we've got going on, the conversations we've got going on, the men's section, the women's section, a lot of different things that are helping to mature and grow us, grow men, raise patriarchs, teach you the things that you need to know, help you walk out in truth and in a righteous way those things that Scripture says with regards to marriage, not just to one, but should the Most High provide more than one woman. So come join us over on Patreon. We would love to have you. Without further ado, anything else? There's lots more that we're going to cover at other times, but we'll let you go here so that you can mull over all this good stuff. For King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.